When you take on an ambitious project like I have, which is to create a world-class 12-course meal from just the 12 acres of land I live on, the first thing we should probably do is take an inventory of what we have. And by inventory, I mean let's take a tour of the property to see what its limitations are and the places it will excel. So let's go for a walk. So let me first give you a rundown on what the property is. Basically, it's 12 acres, half softwoods, half hardwoods. The south side is the hardwood, and that's the side we're on right now. It's mostly made of maple trees, cherry trees, hop hornbeam, and walnut. So there's a fair amount of this property is woodland, probably about 10 out of the 12 acres. And lots of paths throughout the place, and it's basically split down the middle in a stream. It's a zone 6A, kind of southern Canada, same parallel as, the border of France and Spain, but with a climate closer to Helsinki, Finland. Now these are May apples, and they grow on the property naturally. And they produce a fruit. The whole plant's poisonous, except for the fruit. When it's perfectly ripe, you can turn the pulp into an interesting, something interesting, because it tastes similar to passion fruit. Now the paths throughout this property, they wind through the woodland. Here we're coming on to where I do my beekeeping, and I've been cutting down a bunch of the hawthorns, because the hawthorns are a pain in the butt. Because if you've ever seen what a hawthorn looks like, they're quite thorny. They're about a 1-inch long spike. And no matter what type of glove you wear, they work their way through. So I've been taking them out. They also share diseases with apples, so it's a reason to get rid of them. Or not all of them, just some of them. As we head into this area, this is cider apples and pear trees. So I have some pear trees. Most of these apples are European, France, and England cider apples. So they have mostly bitter sharps and bitter sweets. This is an area of raspberries and blackberries, and this little guy, we're going to talk more about pests and disease, but rabbits are quite common around here, and they can wreak havoc on basically all your plants. They tend, especially in the winter, if you don't protect your trunks, they'll chew all your fruit trees, and they'll basically eat the bark off the bottom layer, killing the tree. So though they may be cute, they are public enemy number 1, or at least in the top 5. And they also, for a menu item, they may actually make wild rabbit stew. But we'll talk about that later. These here, they're about 10 or 11 blueberry plants. They're kind of hard to grow because they need acidic soil. Though I acidify the soil, they do have it. Some years are better than others. To the left, you'll see more. These are actually sour cherry bushes. They're from the University of Saskatchewan. They're very cold hardy, but they have like a high sugar content, about 18%. These are hascups. They're another northern fruit. Some people say they're a cross between a blueberry and a raspberry, but they have their own distinct flavor. Now this is the orchard. It's mostly comprised of cherries, plums, quince, peaches, hazelnuts, apricots, and a couple crosses of apricots and plums and cherries and plums. And so far, this orchard has been put in 2 years ago, or most of it, and I don't think I've got any fruit out of it yet. So maybe this year we'll get some. The peach trees are looking good. Now we're coming up onto an area. There are 5 beds of strawberry plants, and to the left you'll see currants. There's 4 currant bushes, red and white. The strawberries are super productive, and they've done really well in this area. Straight ahead is the moth and mosquito trap for the trees. Now this is the garden area, and on basically there's 10 beds, and we just installed the trellis. We've got a couple more trellises to go in. This area is for black currants. There's 18 plants going in. And the idea is with black currants is that we're not in a great wine growing region. So ideally, black currants might be the fruit to go with to make wine, because let's face it, the first tasting note of California Cabernets is black currant. Now this area is just kind of more of the woodland. Another look at the blackberries. This is looking south. And again, there's still room to add more things. So I might add more trellises here, but the fruit trees are set. There's actually an apple and a pear tree back there too. And as we come in this direction, these are northern spice bushes, and they produce like a clove, cinnamon, kind of a spice, which we'll be using. These are grapevines, and there's about 6 apple trees here. The grapevines are getting moved, and I just put in 4 of the 6 apple trees. This is a Rubinette apple, which is said to be one of the best apples in the world. It all depends on your taste, but it's been doing well. It went in last year or the year before. These are figs. I have about 12 fig plants. I grow really well in pots, and I haul them into the shop every year and then take them out every spring and shuffle around. In this area there are pawpaws. This palette is all the stuff I still need to plant, more figs, and rhubarb. Now this is the shop. This is just a quick tour through the shop. You can see some of my beekeeping equipment. It is in desperate need of shelving and cupboards, but that's a project for a later date. This area is kind of where I do like beer brewing, product development, whatever. Kind of an indoor kitchen. We'll call it the lab for now. I did study chemistry, so I do like the idea of having a place to do experiments. And with this project, we're going to need to do a lot of experiments and beer. One should always drink beer when gardening and doing stuff like this. But it should allow us lots of space, and again, there's some studio lights to help with the lighting, because I do want to make sure the video is good, and my desk for doing simple things. And these are the chickens. I've had chickens for about 7 years. I actually started off with my kids. These are leg bars. They produce a light blue egg, but chicken will obviously be one of the protein sources as well as eggs. It'd be hard to produce a meal without them. Now this is an overview of the tour we just took. So the orchard's in the upper right-hand corner, gardens to the left, obviously. And as we pan down, there's the strawberry beds, and straight down there's 7 pawpaw trees. Now as we head north, we're heading towards a stream, and this little area here is kind of by the house, and it was one time covered in all hawthorn and buckthorn, which is an invasive tree, so we took them out. These are Japanese walnuts, and they seem to be doing really well in this climate. We grow a lot of black walnuts around here, so they should fit in perfect and produce a nut that we can use for making oil or working into the menu. To the left is just a little area of the lawn. We're going to actually probably plant some horse chestnut trees and turn it into a German beer garden. My wife's German, so it seems appropriate. The stream basically cuts down the middle of the property, and you can see the road in the background. The stream doesn't have any trout or any useful fish that we could work into the menu, but it's there. It does provide a good source of water for the ducks, and there are ducks around somewhere. Now this is looking south onto the property, and again there's the shop. It's 2 stories. The upper story may become a studio kitchen just to do some work with. Now back of our property is mostly wetland. Well, there's good 4 acres of wetland back there. This little guy is a muskrat, and they're mostly harmless, though every once in a while they like to clog things up. So we just let him be. Beavers can be more of a problem. There's a culvert under the road, and if they block that, then all this area would be flooded. Now we're heading up to the pond, and this is a fire pit we put in there, but the sun sets basically to the west, which is the direction we're heading in. And it is terribly hard on the eyes in the evening. So we might have to do something with this fire pit, but the pond can actually, it's spring fed and puts in about 20,000 liters of fresh water every hour. However, a couple years ago we had a flood, and we got a lot of nutrients in it, so there's been an algae bloom that we got to clean up, and we will in time. Heading back, this is heading towards the north side of the property, and we get into basically a pine forest. It was planted there 20, 30 years ago. So it's fully mature, and there are mushrooms back there. I've managed to find morels and chanterelles and saffron milkcap, so there's a good chance that there'll be some foraged mushrooms for this. I also have mushroom logs on the other side of the pond that will be working their way into the menu. Now this is the area, somebody had built this many years ago, probably 20-30 years ago. It is, I think it was supposed to be a naturalized pond, but it's basically a mosquito incubator at this point. So I have to get an excavator and dig it out. It's just stagnant water, and I got to figure out a way to increase the flow rate because it just produces mosquitoes. There's some natural or wild elderberry plants here, and as we head into this area, this is the deep dark forest. It goes on for a bit, so I will eventually speed up the video, but along the edge of the property are probably about a dozen apple trees. Some of them are quite old. I don't know what varieties they are. There are some russets and a couple others. We found some wild seedling apple trees that are now producing interesting apples. I haven't been able to identify them, and one looks like it's been basically been growing here for a while. So we call it the Shabadoo apple. It'll be interesting. It's a large green apple, quite sweet. Now this is Smokey. He's the resident cat that will follow me around the yard. And he tends to always be at my feet when I'm taking video. So he's also an indoor cat at times, but during the day he's outside. And he will walk the trails with you. If you go for a walk, you get company. The total walking distance on this little walk is just about 1 kilometer, and 2/3 of a mile. So it's quite the walk, though the property's, I think, 400-500 meters straight back. Where I'm heading, there's just a few little things to show you, which is the natural spring that feeds the trout pond. It just percolates out of the ground. And there's a fair number of springs on this property, and the water quality is good. You can actually grow watercress in it, and there's an abundance of watercress. So again, another potentially foraged item. So I'm going to speed it up here, and I will see you at the spring. This is just a short distance from the spring. The woodland gets pretty thick down there, and I've been cutting down some hawthorns. So this is the edge of the farm. It's crop. This is the actual spring. So you can see the water just percolates out of the ground, and it comes out pretty quick. And again, every time I've measured it, it's been 11 degrees C and very clean. So it helps keep the pond can actually support 600 trout, or that's what they used to support. And this is what we call the rock pile. This is the end of the property, and it's a nice view. There's lots of woodland, lots of forest. And that's a quick tour of the property. Eventually we're going to go through each individual area and talk about the plants that are planted there and the fruit trees and each one of those over the years as this project develops, because right now it's just so much information that it's not really worth talking about unless we talk specifically about each one and where they're going to fit into the menu and how we're going to do recipe development. In the next video, we're going to talk about the first thing you should do when you start gardening. And if you like these videos, please feel free to subscribe, like, and share. And I will see you in the next video. Thanks for watching.